Now, we know that in conflict and in any polarization in society, education is one of the most critical elements. At the opinion formation age for young people, the experiences, the relationships, the knowledge that they get through, that they have imbibed in those years, it can go on and frame the rest of their lives in ways that are truly transformative. But the other thing that we do know about education is that it's quite expensive. It needs to be institutionalized. And when it's done properly, it needs to be done at a sustainable scale that can include and transform hundreds of thousands of people within a society. And that's why education is one of the most important areas of ALMEP's membership, where we see the transformative potential of the International Fund. It also happens to be the part of ALMEP's membership where you see some of the most interesting innovation and entrepreneurship and how the field of education has evolved over the last few decades. I bang on about Northern Ireland very often, but actually in Israel, in the shared society field, there is world leadership in the field of education going on. It just needs to be at the scale necessary to transform the underlying reality. That's why we're going to have a panel focused right now on the field of education to meet some of the leaders and the social entrepreneurs who've been designing and rolling out these programs, and why we're delighted to welcome back Jason Isaacs to help lead that conversation. Jason, welcome back.
Hi, that Tony Blair's quite a good speaker. You should think about doing it for a living.
He's not bad.
So you do bang on about Northern Ireland, John, but I have to remind you that it's not been the perfect success story. I think it's something like less than half of the schools are integrated. Still, 2/3 of the schools, I think, are still segregated. Is that right?
That's correct, exactly. It's fallen behind. And this is where I think the reality in Israel and some of the ideas and innovation they can teach teachers and educators in Northern Ireland. There's a lot to be learned. And this, again, it's why the International Fund is such an interesting instrument to scale excellent ideas already there, but just a bit too embryonic.
Right. And I just want to, before we do the panel, I just want to remind everyone watching at home, all the huge amounts of money you're talking about are not yours. You need money in order to free up this money. And I'm slightly banging the drum, but I need to, because we're talking about huge expansion and massive grants. Tell me something, if we've got a moment. You mentioned at some point there are other countries who are interested, or you think might be interested if you lobby them, given the new reality on the ground in the Middle East and some of the new peace agreements. You feel like you can free up money from other countries. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, the government of the United Kingdom has officially endorsed the concept. The minister has now pledged that he will begin negotiations with the incoming Biden administration in January. Huda and I had very promising conversations at the Elysee in Paris with advisors to President Macron. And then we've had very senior conversations with Germany, with the European Union, with the Netherlands, and then other countries like Australia and Japan. We've been waiting for the moment that we appear to be at right now in Washington, where this law is enacted. And then it's a flashing green light for us as advocates to get out on the road and get those promising conversations that are ripe to the point where commitments are being made and this institutionalized multinational body is being created that can look at a 20-year time horizon and finance the sort of programs you're learning about tonight in a way that will allow them to scale to 10, 15, 20 times their current level. And for that, as you keep banging on, you do need private philanthropic support.
And when people give you this money, you're not flying first class.
I have never flown first class in my life.
Excellent.
Economy
I want to picture you staying in very grubby hotels.
I could show you some plastic sheets in hotels in Tel Aviv and the Gulf as well.
All right. Well, I'm late, so get off the screen and let's talk to some of these people doing extraordinary work in the education field. Because Israeli schools, of course, and schools across the region, not just divided along Arab-Israeli lines. Inside Israel, they're divided along religious lines. But we have a chance to get in early, and certainly with the expansion of the program. Is it the Jesuits to say, give me the child before they're 7, I'll show you the man? This is the place where you can plant the seeds properly. I was told, there's certainly a narrative that I was told and absorbed when I was young that I've had to unshake and see things a different way. I wish that I'd been educated the way some of the kids we're going to learn about in a minute are being educated. We need to scale it up. So first, let's talk to Mohammed Darwashi of Givat Haviva. You're the only, I think the only person I'm speaking to that has a physical presence in Israel. Just again, I want to contextualize it. Given the reality in Israel that, for most people and across the region, how do you work against the grain there? How do you deal with the fact what they're finding at home and in the rest of their communities? And how can you scale that up?
Well, thank you, Jason, for having me. I mean, as you mentioned, Givat Haviva is probably the only organization with a campus. We have a 40-acre campus that we got donated by the kibbutz movement already in 1963. That's when we founded the first peace education institute in Israel that already won the UNESCO Prize for Peace Education. And since then, we've been seeing many initiatives and training many of the top professionals in this field. We actually use 3 different educational theories, what we call the social contact theory, the narrative debate theory, and the mutual interest theory. The focus is to work in 3 fields: in education, in creating partnerships, and in empowerment. So just to answer your question, Jason, in education, we bring about 5,000 Jewish and Arab kids every year. Depends on funding. Sometimes we go up to 10,000, but our staff knows how to handle 50,000. Our facility can handle 50,000. Just there, we can do at least 10 times more encounters between Jewish and Arab youth, that this is their first encounter ever in their life. And from evaluation, we know that it works and it lasts. If we
what does that mean it works? Sorry to interrupt. What does that mean it works? What do you see working?
How does that manifest itself? It means that we're able to touch their hearts and minds. We're able to, maybe we're not bringing peace, but we're bringing pieces of peace. We're able to change perspectives, challenge stereotypes, reduce animosity, and we can measure this in short term, mid-term, and long term. We know that our work sinks in the back of their heads, in the back of their minds, and they become better civic engagers. They engage with the other much better. They are able to see the humanity in the other side. They're able to agree and disagree with the other side. They're able to focus and look for creating shared space, whether it is being polite to each other, or also being able to live in the same apartment building, or be able to criticize the same government, or work in a shared project in a laboratory at a hospital or university. We try to pair Jewish and Arab municipalities, adjacent municipalities, to work with each other on joint interests, such as building in joint industrial zones, joint sports facilities, joint public parks. We work with 5 pairs right now. We can easily bring this up to 50 pairs. We have the know-how. We've been practicing this for the last 6 years. We can work with 50 pairs, 50 Jewish towns, 50 Arab towns, to identify a mutual interest and actually work on it. In addition, we have identified the need for the empowerment of the weaker party in this relationship, empowerment of the Arab kids. In order to increase the percentage of Arab employees in the high tech, we identify 120 excellent Arab kids, 14 years old already when they are 14, and start giving them academic courses in computer science. By the time they are 18, they finish high school with 50% of their undergraduate degree and straight to the high-tech industry in Israel. We work with 120 kids every year. We can work with 1,200 kids every year. We know how.
I'm sorry, I've got to cut you off, Mohammed, because otherwise I'll spend all the time talking to you. But thank you so much. And anybody who wants to look into Givat Haviv, obviously, they have a website, and any of these organizations. When you come next
time, we're going to show you where we're
I'm dying to come. Listen, I'm dying to come meet all of you. But I've got to skip on. It's speed dating after all. So thank you for that. And we're going to talk to Amnon Berry Suliciano. Did I get that right?
That's right.
Thank you. Of the Abraham Initiative. So Amnon, you work with young people in the state's educational system, but also adults, politicians, journalists. How do you bridge the gap between your vision of shared society, what you're teaching them, and the reality of the life that they encounter when they go home? How does that work?
Yeah, so Jason, as a policy organization, our job is to help the government to accept and implement programs that are designed to help Jews and Arabs to simply live together. And we have an effective way to do this convincing, which is to carry out projects and use them as examples. And perhaps the most exciting idea that we're trying to push now is related to the segregation between the education systems in Israel. And in order to erode this segregation, we offer pairs of Jewish and Arab schools to study just one subject together as a beginning. Each week at the other school, and this idea, which is called shared education, was imported to Israel from Northern Ireland. It was tested successfully there, and now we want to prove that in Israel it can be as effective in changing the hearts and minds, and in order to for our Ministry of Education to adopt it as its policy.
And the Ministry of Education at the moment is backing you. It allows you to do it. Some of this is state endorsed.
So, yeah, normally most of our projects are done with the government, with the Ministry of Education. And the assumption is that once we prove the value of the program, it will be adopted. And this is why it is so critically important for us to expand those programs and to make, to make the argument, the case that they actually work.
Fantastic. I'm going to skip on. That sounds amazing. I have to say, I did not imagine that the government would be backing schemes like this. So that's chipping away another brick of the wall of my cynicism. So thank you for that. And now Danny Elazar, CEO of the Hand in Hand Schools Network. Danny, how does a kindergarten to matriculation, which is an entire school, joint Jewish Arab education system, how does it change the life of its students, considering how different that is? It's roughly the same question. When they get home, the community they're surrounded by, the attitudes they're surrounded by, and how does it change the teachers and the parents? What do they do when they get home? How do they incorporate that into their life?
So good evening, Jason, and thanks for the question. Great to be here with you. I'll tell you, I grew up in Israel in Jewish schools with only Jewish friends. And the only times I met Arabs were when I read about them in books or watched movies, and they were always the enemy. This is how most Israeli kids still grow up in Israel today, separately. And Hand in Hand is here in order to change that, to make a change. So within this separated system, we're a bilingual, multicultural network of schools and communities that bring together Jews and Arabs, kids and families on a daily basis. I mean, they're all the time together. They're living together in better times and in worse times, in order to bring a message of hope and equality. They're playing, they're studying, they're involved in deep discussions together in both languages. When you walk into our schools, you see an optimistic future picture of how Israel could be.
So both languages, you mean you're teaching the Arab kids Hebrew and you're teaching the Israeli kids Arabic?
Right, so we have 7 schools that are spread across the country with 2,100 students who speak both languages and 10,000 community members who are all innovative bridge builders between both societies.
You ready for some money? Could you make it 70? Could you make it 70 schools? Are you ready for some money?
Of course, our goal is we want to at least double the number of schools and even more than that. So every family will have that opportunity to live, to study together, shared, and to have that alternative for every family that is interested in shared education in every mixed city or region. If we do that, we can become a model and a beacon for the wider community, city, and country in order to promote a shared society, equal society in Israel. That's what we're aiming to. And the more money we have, the more schools we can open, the more we can reach that goal.
We can help create the next generation that will not screw up as badly as we did. Thanks very much, Danny. Now, Erez Bar from A New Way. Erez, you work inside the Israeli school system, which is a slightly different system. Your program is slightly different. You bring outsiders in. I say outsiders. You bring Arabs presumably into Israeli schools. Are they accepted? How does that work? What kind of resistance is there, and what effect do you see from it?
Hey Jason, thanks for having me here today. A New Way work at the formal educational system in Israel. I don't know if everybody knows that our formal educational system is formally divided. This means that Jews and Arabs rarely have any chance to work together or meet while they're growing up. A New Way actually allowing them to do so. We are praying together schools and communities and bringing them together as one force to meet and collaborate together. We do that using a multi-community wide approach. This means that we work simultaneously, both in schools and outside schools. In schools, we work with teachers, with parents, and with the students themselves, and outside schools, we work with the community leaders, municipal staff, and mayors. Our evaluations show that working with all of them simultaneously is highly increasing our impact. Furthermore, A New Way uses a unique educational approach. We bring the informal into the formal system. We emphasizing that learning should be from one's own self-experience. This is one of the reasons that most of our facilitators come from the world of arts. As you know, theater actors, musicians, and artists bring a unique set of tools. Those set of tools help them to break down the ice and create the experiences needed in order to create change in opinion and change in behaviors. And those two are fundamental in order to create multicultural collaboration and peace building.
Fantastic. Thank you, Erez. Let's hear it for the arts. I'm sorry, I'm getting the wind up thing again, even though I haven't spoken to everybody. So thank you for that, Erez. And finally, Mirvat Alazeh from Merchavim. So I might have misread the brief. Your organization is the one that brings in Arab and Palestinian teachers to schools with Israeli kids. Am I right?
Yes, we basically help in recruiting and placing Arab teachers in Jewish schools, supporting them and their principals, and providing them professional developing opportunities. Our research
and what happens when they come in there? Do they face resistance? Are people welcoming? How does it play out?
Well, sometimes
don't paint a pretty picture. Tell us the truth.
Yes, sometimes they do. Sometimes they face some problems, but we are there to help. And they make a big change because beyond being math, science, sports, English, or homeroom teachers, Arab teachers in Jewish school affect pupils and they become their role models. They expose them to their culture, traditions, holidays, and they basically become agents of change who can positively change attitudes of the colleagues, students, and shift negative stereotypes and misconceptions about Arabs in general.
Right, and they're not teaching about the conflict. They're teaching subjects, they're teaching maths and
yes,
English
they teach subjects, but they break, by their presence, they break the barriers, the different barriers.
I'm sure. Thanks very much. That's all. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for. Anybody, again, who wants to look up any of these organizations, anyone who's traveling to the Middle East should get in contact with them and see what they do on the ground. I can't wait to go and see what they do. But I think you get a sense of the work, anyone watching, you get a sense of the work and the innovation that's happening to radically alter the experience of young people and find some middle point between their competing narratives. But it's not happening enough to enough people. What they're doing is extraordinary. It will happen to more people, hopefully, with some of this money comes through from Congress. With the money that Ormep can raise from various countries who have expressed an interest, it could happen to millions of kids across the region. And imagine the difference that would make for peace in the future and how different their experience would be from their parents and grandparents. And it's in your hands. Actually, it's in your wallet. So if you could reach out now and give some money, that would be fantastic. Well, that's appalling. I mean, she was fantastic. I'm appalling. I missed out one of our key contributors to the panel, and her daughter is already calling her to ask what happened. So please, Gal Mossenson from Ein Bustan, tell us, you start Arab Jewish educational work very, very young, 3 or 4, I think. How does that work? First of all, do you see the fruits of that? Does it work? Is it worth the bother? They're so young. How does it impact? And I'm so sorry.
It's all right. It's definitely worth the bother. We all know the importance of early childhood education. We can't stress it enough. It's the ages we are most open to the world. Now in Ein Bustan, we start at the age of 1, actually. We're a community-based Jewish Arab nonprofit organization for social change, and we basically run a Waldorf bilingual multicultural nursery and kindergarten. And kids from ages 1 to 7 from the neighboring Jewish and Arabic communities. Basically, we have a vision to live together in equality, peace, and mutual understanding. And we provide this opportunity through the young children of both people. They come together on a daily basis, getting to know one another, respect, and interact from an early age. And they have.
Do you have follow-up data? Have you been going long enough to see whether they stay in touch?
They do stay in touch. We can see basically the sharing of these cultures and languages from an early age with a bilingual curriculum brings also the families together. And the kids meet in the afternoon, their families meet in the afternoon, and this friendship and love that they develop with the other children, the staff, the other families, it helps them keep an open heart in the future for future encounters with people who are other or different than themselves. And we can see how these families stay in touch and the children.
Sorry, are you ready to expand? Could you do it? If there's somebody tomorrow morning said, can you scale up 10 times? Could you do it?
I don't know about 10 times, but most definitely we want to expand our nursery for more nurseries, more kindergartens, and we definitely want to grow into a school.
Fantastic. Thank you, Gal. And I'm sorry again, I forgot you. I'm too vain to wear my glasses on camera, and I missed the paragraph. Meanwhile, back to the original program.